Hey, it's Amy. I'm excited and I'm also nervous because I want to tell you my story about my faith crisis, faith transition, and leaving the LDS church. And I wanted to tell you about it because I think a lot of people, I think it's a shock to people that I've left the church. And for what, at first I'm in the church, super strong, bearing my testimony, and then the next thing some people know, it's like, Amy's gone, she's gone rogue, what the heck happened to her? And I want people to know what happened from me. And so I wanted to make this video. I'm in my car because my baby's sleeping, gone to bed on time. So yeah, before I start, I want to tell you that if you're a true believing Mormon, if you believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the true church, don't worry about this video. I'm not going to try to convince you that the church isn't true. And I'm not going to be talking about specifics that caused me to doubt. I'm going to touch on topics that bothered me or didn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to go into specifics. So you're not going to lose your faith watching this. Instead, I hope we create a bridge, and I hope this communication helps people understand me and also helps other people who are having a difficult time or who have left. So my faith crisis kind of started when my family members were leaving. So my 4 siblings had left the church, and a few of my really close friends had left. And if you know me, you know that I was Orthodox Mormon. I was following everything I was told the hardest and best I could. And when my family members and friends were leaving, I was confused. I wanted to know what was going on. How could this happen? And one of my friends, who her husband had left the church, but she was still in the church, gave me some really good advice. And that was just to listen to what these other people who have left have to say. Because all I was doing was trying to argue with people and tell them they were wrong and try to point how the church was true. And I was not listening. So I started listening to people's stories, not to argue, but only with the intent to understand from where they were coming from. And that really gave me a lot of empathy for other people. I also took it upon myself to take President Nelson's challenge when he asked, I guess he didn't ask, but from what I remember, he said something like, during this time, it's not enough to have a testimony. You need to be converted. If you don't have a testimony, if you're not converted, now's the time to do it. Because in these latter days, it's going to be too hard without having that. And so I thought, yes, I need that. I really need that. Because as I reflected on my own testimony, I thought, I believe the church is true. I hope it's true. But I really don't know that it's true. And God hasn't really told me that it's true. I've just kind of felt good about it. I had definitely had spiritual experiences in my life, some very strong spiritual experiences, but those experiences weren't God telling me that the LDS church was his true church. So I started praying. And I should say that this started like about 2.5 years ago. So as I was praying so hard all the time, like, Heavenly Father, please let me know if this is your true church, that this is the church. I was reading the Book of Mormon. I'm doing my scriptures study. I'm trying to get answers. And the more questions I had and the more questions that I asked and tried to find answers for, the less answers I had and the more questions I had. Things didn't make sense to me when I read them. Like, the word of wisdom wasn't making sense to me. And I found out about how much money the church has in investments and it being over $100 billion. And this really disturbed me I found out where tithing money goes. I thought that my tithing money was going to helping people, and it wasn't. And that I'd been paying 10% to... Anyway, I don't really need to go into that. But the way that the church wasn't transparent about it and how much money that they had really bothered me. And I was in the Young Women's, which, by the way, being in the Young Women's is like the best calling ever, besides primary pianist, also the best calling. I loved working in the Young Women's, and I was the Young Women's secretary, and I also was a Young Women's camp leader. Those are the best callings for me. I loved it. I loved working with the youth. I felt very fulfilled helping the youth in my community. And there were things that, as lessons would come up that we needed to help teach, that I said to myself, I can't teach this. Like, I actually really disagree with this. A big thing for me was for the strength of the youth pamphlet. The way it talked about sexuality, modesty, those things really bothered me. And I didn't like that it told the youth that they couldn't have certain hair colors. That was one of my early things, is it says something like no unnatural hair colors. And I'm like, I'm not going to teach the young women that they can't have pink hair if they want pink hair. Like, this does not matter in the internal scheme of things. And I started getting confused on why the church was teaching youth cultural things and putting a big focus on that. And when I say the church and things that I disagree with, I'm not talking about local leaders, or I'm talking about the church organization and high leaders. The members are amazing. I love the members, especially of my Bear Mountain ward. I have received nothing but love from this ward, from the people I have talked to about this, from my bishop. It's going to make me choke up because these people just love me for who I am. And have been so supportive of me. So I'm not talking about the members when I talk about issues I have. Anyway, so Young Women's, there's things that are coming up. I'm like, I'm not going to teach them these things. I don't agree with this. I held on to this hope that they were going to change for the strength of the youth pamphlet for a while. And then the pandemic hit, and I had been so busy, and then everything came to a stop, and I didn't have a job anymore. I didn't have my volleyball I was playing. I didn't have the church. I didn't have the youth. And so I started really digging down and researching more. I was praying really hard, and I was getting nothing. I felt like I was getting nothing for over a year. And by about a year and a half, I kind of accepted that I wasn't going to get an answer like I thought I would, that the church was true. And I realized that I just needed to give it time. And this was heartbreaking. I mean, if you asked my husband some of the most sincere prayers, I'm bawling, I'm crying. I don't understand why God's not answering my prayers. Especially when I'm putting the Book of Mormon challenge to the test, reading the Book of Mormon, asking God if it's true. It says God's going to let me know that this is his word, and I'm not getting answers for a long time. And I think it was about a year and a half in that I started thinking, maybe it's not true. I don't know. It's maybe possible that it's not true. And anyway, long story short, I started really reflecting on my own experiences, and I realized that my experiences weren't lining up with church experience, like what I heard from other people in the church, or that what I was supposed to be feeling or experiencing. And I was reading about church history, and things were not making sense. It was not the narrative that I grew up with, that I taught people on my mission about Joseph Smith, who he was, about the Book of Mormon. There's a lot to unpack there, so I'm not going to go into it. And the more I kept reading and the more I kept asking, I was listening to General Conference, trying to get answers, and I started seeing patterns in these answers, that the questions I have weren't being answered. And as I kept going, I started leaning towards like, I'm starting to not think this is true. I'm starting to not think this is true, until I was really, really on the fence there. I was like, if I had to take a test and it said, is the LDS Church God's one true church? And I was like, I think I'm at the point where I'd say false, like true or false. I think I'd say false at this point. And then I talked to somebody really close to me who means a lot to me. And it's their story's not my story to tell. But what it came down to was, I realized that a lot of people, including people I love and hold dear to me, and including myself, had experienced a lot of harm from some of the teachings of the LDS Church. For this one person, this person told me that they had a plan to kill themselves. That they're ready to kill themselves rather than be forced to live the life the LDS Church taught. And that's when I said, this is not okay. This isn't okay anymore. It's not okay for people to be hurting themselves and to hate themselves and to want to kill themselves or kill themselves because they're gay, because they don't want to go on a mission, because they can't live their true self. They can't live authentically, that they would rather die than do that. And that's where I drew the line. That's when my shelf broke. That's when everything that I had stacked up on this shelf, trying to make sense of it and putting things to the side, broke it. And that's when I knew that the church wasn't true for me. In my mind, I could not see how the true church would be so harmful. And when I realized that, everything started making sense. Everything clicked. Trying to make sense of Joseph Smith and polygamy and a lot of the things that he did made sense. Book of Mormon, gold plates, visions, temple ceremony, masonry, it all clicked. It all made sense that this was man-made. And there's a gospel topics essay. That's where I got a lot of my information, because at this time I was not going to look at any other resources for information. I wanted just church approved resources. So that's where I got a lot of this information. And in one of those essays, it says, the quote is something like, "We look through a glass darkly." And what it's saying, from what I understand, is basically, we're looking at history and it doesn't really make sense. It's scrambled and skewed, like trying to look through a frosted window pane or a really dark glass. You try to look back through history and it doesn't make sense. And when things clicked and I realized the church wasn't true, everything became crystal clear for me. I felt like that glass was gone and I was looking through a brand new pair of lenses crafted just for my prescription. And very quickly, I felt relief. I felt peace. I felt comfort. I felt this was right. I felt like I had finally had an answer. I'd finally gotten my answer. And then things in my life almost immediately started getting better. I noticed my stress went down. My anxiety went down. My feelings for myself got better. My relationships became more genuine. And I thought that my world was going to crash, because that's what happens with a lot of people when they realize the church isn't true because their whole belief system, it's all encompassing. Every part of your life is affected by the LDS church. If you live in an Orthodox manner like I had, it was everything. And so I thought my life was going to turn to pieces. And it didn't. Instead, things got better. My relationship with my husband got better. I was less judgmental of people. I thought that I could show love to other people. But when I let go of these beliefs that, like about homosexuality being a sin or people living different ways, not on the one true path, once I let that go, I could genuinely care and love people in a way that I never had before. And I just kept seeing good things in my life. And I had my baby, and I felt comfort in that I didn't have to justify or try to teach some of these things to my son. I used to have a huge long list of all the things that I needed to do, all the things that God wanted me to do. And it went from, you need to do ministering, you need to do temple work, you need to do genealogy, you need to go to church, you need to fulfill your calling, you need to do service, you need to pay your tithing, reading your scripture, saying your prayers, both with yourself and with your husband and with your kids, and you need to teach them. All that stuff dropped, and my whole belief system became love. Love everyone. And when I dropped all of that, everything just got so much better for me. I feel so happy. I feel so much more relaxed. I feel really content and hopeful. I don't have the answers to a lot of questions. I'm left with, I don't really know what my belief system is right now. I hope for things. And I don't really know where I'm going at this point, but it feels good and it feels right for me. So that's my story. And I hope that if I could just leave any parting words, it'd be that the people who leave the church have legitimate reasons. And the best thing that has happened to me is for members of the church to love me and still want to be my friend, to not ostracize me. Like my mom is amazing. She listens to me. She supports me. She says that my happiness is the most important thing to her. And if that's found out of the church, she would rather me be happy out of the church than miserable in the church and anxious and stressed. She'd rather me be myself. I think my husband's calling me, wondering where I am. So there's my story. Bye.